but having a airtight contract with the language of the day that it was written and very specific instructions on how to handle certain matters, disagreements, disputes.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
I'm having a great day, Lindsay. I got to tell you, I just spoke to somebody who was in Charleston, downtown, and I thought to myself, I was just there, man. I could have totally met in person. But anyway, other than that, I'm doing really well. How are you doing today?
Are you sure what you were thinking wasn't, oh my God, if I lived there, we could just meet for lunch?
You know, what's really funny? As soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm like, oh, there she's going to go. She's going to go to the living there. Of course she is. What was I thinking?
Never a day goes by without I mean, you brought it up, so I don't even know why you went down that road. But I'm super excited today. We just did a little intro with our guest, and he decided to drop right as I was hitting the record button that he rescues animals. So I can't not start the show chatting about that, because that's just a really cool thing. I don't think we've ever had anyone on the show before who has worked and lived on a farm and shared love of animals like me. So Grant from TruSummit Insurance, we're not going to talk the whole time about animal rescue, I promise, but would love to hear what animals you've rescued recently and how you started doing that.
Well, you'll have to cut me off because it's really easy for me to talk about animal rescues and airplanes, and so you'll have to let me know when to stop talking. But um, yes, I have a huge passion for it, and it's a major part of our agency culture, and even plays a big role into why we became a remote agency. I wanted the ability to work from home, maintain this lifestyle of ranching, having horses, having dogs, and eventually I ran out of space. And so, how would I continue to rescue more animals without having the space for it? We decided we were going to fly them. And so I have an agency aircraft that we use, and we take them from kill shelters to a foster family or their forever home to make sure that they're safe and we're getting them off of the euthanasia list. And
Oh
so
my God.
our agency, our clients, our staff, there's so much just buy into that. Where our clients, they share it on social media. We let them know that by just being a part of the company, by simply placing a single policy with us, that they're part of that cause, because we take the profits out of the company to fund those flights. We don't ask for any additional donations or anything. In addition to that, it's just simply by being a part of the TruSummit family that they're helping us rescue more animals.
So when they sign for their policy, does the Arms of the Angels song play in the background
It
in the
should.
office? Is there a button? That'd be really funny.
It
That's completely awesome. Oh
It
my
should, and
gosh.
we're continuing to build that out and get more vocal about it. In the past, it was something that it was a good thing that we did silently, and as I've been learning to be a better marketer, we've been getting more vocal about it, putting it on social media, placing it on our website. Um, we have some campaigns built around that, and our welcome emails to our clients, our retention center, and again, it's just so amazing because we have clients that reach out to us and they share our videos with their friends, their family, and say, "Look at what my agency does." And then it's super cool because I get to involve my wife and my kids, and so we end up usually having a nice weekend or a nice day around it, a nice evening where we could have a turn and burn trip from out here in Boise, Idaho, to Bend, Oregon, or up to Seattle. Maybe have dinner in Seattle before we come back. Um, but we get to play with lots of cute dogs, and my kids get to participate. I get to fly an airplane, and then we get to market insurance. It's like my four favorite things.
Yeah. So is it mostly dogs, or is it also larger farm animals?
Dogs and cats. Yeah,
Dogs
whatever,
and cats. Okay.
whatever I can fit on the airplane. I do have a bunch of rescue goats and a couple rescue horses, but we can't fit them on the airplane. Yeah.
So I got to say, Grant, I love that you started talking about it because I think all too often independent agents do things like this that really impact their communities, but they forget to talk about it. It's like, well, that's just what we do. I love that you are talking about it and that your customers are talking about it because it's one of the things that attracted me to this industry in the first place was the community involvement. You know, I came from a tech startup before I came into the industry. At some point, I'm going to have to stop saying that because I've been in the industry longer than I was in that space. But it's not a place where I thought it was super exciting. But as I got in and understood what independent agents do for their communities, it was like a place you love. So hats off to you for actually talking about it. If you're listening to this and you're an independent agent and you're doing stuff in your communities, please talk about it. It's okay to do that. In fact, you're doing yourself and the industry a disservice if you're not talking about it, right? So, but I do
Absolutely.
want to start. Yeah, I do want to start at the beginning though. Lindsay went straight to what she loves, which I love that she did that. And I actually could talk about airplanes for a long time. I grew up with a dad who was in the military, who flew helicopters. You know, it was part of our life. He then worked for several airlines. Then he worked for Pratt and Whitney, who makes turbine engines. That's been part of my world, and maybe we'll get to that. But I would love, love, love to talk about first. You might be the youngest person that started an agency that I know personally. Like I don't know anybody that. And I think it was a scratch agency. Is that correct?
You know, it became a scratch agency, and so the background of that was yes, I started at 18, and I opened up the property casualty side of my father's agency back then. He was a life health agent, and so he was the one that had drugged me into an office from herding cattle and construction work at the time, and I was a senior in high school. Um, and so he had no PNC experience. Um, excuse me. And I had to at 18. uh, it was a different industry back then. It was a different world, and I had to. And we're to only 20 years ago to really age myself for everybody, but I had to drive around, and I remember going to Sacramento and up and down the state of California and meeting at some of the office headquarters for the Hartford and for Travelers and for um, Safeco and Liberty and these different companies that were out here. At 18, trying to convince them that they should appoint me at that time with absolutely no experience, um, because and what I had was the possible marketing opportunity to cross sell the health book of business that my father had created. Um, how that became a scratch agency, um, eh, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but my father actually had embezzled about $1.2 million in my name and fraudulently used my life license after I received that in 2005. And so um, it was stressful, let me tell you. And this all
Yeah,
when I
I'd
had found out
say.
about it. Yeah. So I had joined the industry in 2003, and I had uncovered that when I started getting notices from some of the carriers in 2008, coinciding with the financial collapse at the time. And I lost my house. I had then dissolved that partnership. I was the minority partner in that business, and I recovered what I could out of my book of business, and I created my own company at that point, and opened my own company in 2009. Um, the the background, some of the additional details of that was I found out the Department of Insurance in California had a fully armed and sworn law division when they used a battering ram to kick in the doors of the place I was renting and pull me out of bed at 6 in the morning at gunpoint. So do not mess with the Department of Insurance.
Noted.
So, um, what it came down to was uh, my father just he had been doing a lot of things that had extended across state lines that were not part of the insurance industry, but had gotten not just the Department of Insurance's attention, but the FBI's attention. And so for the association, um, that's why they yanked me out of bed with a no-knock warrant. But a year of criminal defense and a Chapter 7 bankruptcy later, while I was building my company as it is today, um, and trying to get through that period of my life. And I had a month of homelessness where I had a amazing German Shepherd dog that he lived with me in my truck, and I'd say is a big reason I got through that time. Um, he gave me something to hang on to, and he passed away at the ripe old age of 14 just 2 years ago. Um,
No.
and my kids loved him. Both my kids got to meet him. And fortunately, that period of my life, I was not married. I didn't have kids. Um, and so I was able to kind of just focus on the task at hand and not drag other people through all those weeds. So that was that experience, and so I started out in this industry really about $1.2 million in debt and with a Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
Ooh, I got to tell you, there's a lot of stories that people just don't know what it's taken to get to where you are, and it is understandable why you care so much about animals because they do have a way of getting you through all kinds of places and times and things that you encounter. And man, I got to tell you, my right, wrong, or indifferent, my dad is one of the most important and most influential people in my life. Not for the same reasons, obviously, that your dad was, but clearly you took that experience and you've moved forward and you've built something that's pretty nice. We've had the pleasure of working together, and I cannot even imagine what that was like. I literally can't, because I'm thinking my dad was my safe spot to go. My dad was the place to get advice, and I wish he was here every single day. And so it's really hard for me to understand that, but I feel really blessed that that's the situation that I had. I am sorry that that is not the situation that you had. That's unthinkable.
Yeah, and there's so many. Everybody has so many different life experiences, and it's interesting. We all kind of they lead us almost to the same place, and almost by divine
Yeah,
appointment, it's led me to meeting you and your organization, and the employees and the agents and the clients and everybody that I have today. And so there was a period where I was definitely very bitter over it, and but I look back and I'm grateful. I never want to go through it again. I never want to wish that on anybody. Um, but it sort of, a baptism by fire. It cast me out of the frying pan, which
yeah,
it was a contentious um partnership to begin with. And I think any business relationship that somebody may be entering with a family member, whether it be a parent or a sibling or a spouse, it's going to have its own dynamic, and so that's something to be aware of. That um, everybody starts out with the best of intentions, and but they don't plan for the worst case scenario on that. And there was a lot of things going into that just at my youthful age with my father at that point, I was still very much looking toward him like a father figure and for his guidance
sure,
and leadership. And there was just some inherent um, personality flaws, person personality disorders that he was diagnosed with. That looking back, we could say I could clearly see, like, okay, this is this. You could look at for this. There was definitely a recipe behind that we could say I would do something, he would react in this way, and it was almost like a roadmap. It was like reading
mm,
a dictionary, if you will. It was so logical once I could put the pieces together and kind of step back from it, take a look from outside of the box and really see what was happening. But when you're in it, in the middle of it, and relying as a young man at that point on somebody that you would look at and hope that they have more experience or think that they have more experience, and you're following their guidance, it's really easy to get lost.
yeah,
Um, I'm trying to say that as coherently as possible without getting into too much detail about it. But again, I'm grateful for it because it forced me to become um, the business owner, the employer that I am today, and I could look back at so many examples in the way that other agents in that time were being treated by my father, including myself, and how he went about handling problems or adversity. And I can clearly say, I don't want to do it that way. Let me do
Oh
it the
yeah,
other way.
some of the best leaders to learn from are the ones that tell you what you don't want to do. I mean, listen, we did a podcast that would probably be one of my favorites, was talking about failures and how failures actually shape us to it's actually a part of success. And if it isn't a part of your success, I don't know that anyone's being honest, because every single one of us have suffered failures, made decisions that you know, hindsight's 2020, and that decision is not something we would have made. But you know, some of the failures and some of the hardships are deeper for others, but without question it shapes who we are. And not just the best leaders shape us, but some of the people that we know we do not want to emulate. So let's talk about where you are today in the agency that you have, and partnerships in particular, because as you said, there's lots of agencies that are not singly owned. They take on minority partners. I actually encourage people to create a pathway to ownership as a way, and one of the most important, and I think one of the most unique parts about our industry is this ability to provide a pathway to ownership in order to keep people inside your agency. So tell us some of the lessons you've learned from partnership. Like, tell us, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self before you enter into a partnership? What would you have told yourself to look for, or to, because hindsight's always clear, right? Like, or even in partnerships you've done since then, like what are the steps you would take to build a healthy partnership rather than one that is not so much?
First things first, I start with a ironclad partnership agreement contract, and be very specific. Um, Laws change, and even in a decade of I just came out of a previous partnership. Even in a decade, um, certain laws will change, and we've all seen that, especially happen across the country with some employment laws recently. And I mean, what California constitutes as independent contractor versus W-2, and how the language changes around that. And even, an example of that, they came out with a law that you have to, all insurance agents are supposed to be employees. And then within the year, they changed it and said, never mind, you guys are independent contractors again. So laws change, and they change all the time. But having a very airtight contract with the language of the day that it was written, and very specific instructions um, on how to handle certain matters, disagreements, disputes, um, even handling just the mundane meetings, quarterly meetings for the company, how those are to be held. You want to be very specific so that there's no room for interpretation. Because when you leave room for interpretation, inevitably one person is going to, well, you're just going to get a disagreement. And that's because you have two people with two different world perspectives, and both thinking that they're trying to run the company in the best way possible, because both people are wanting the best for the company, but they're just disagreeing on what's best for the company. So that's without it being specific. And you get a lot of agreements that are thrown together. And this is what my recent experience was. And it was, honestly, it was my fault. I used a client. Actually, it was an attorney that put this agreement together for us, and it was very vague. And so it left so much room for interpretation that um, at the split of my second and what I'll call my last partnership, because I don't plan on having partners in the future, at least at this point. I'm open to it, but I'm not I'm not turned off from it. I just at this point don't have any prospective partners targeted. But at the split of this last partnership, it just left a lot of room for interpretation that cost us, almost an entire year of legal back and forth, legal chess between attorneys, trying to interpret what was meant out of this contract to begin with. And so, in that, there was a lot of cost just in trying to figure out what was meant by this first contract. Um, say what was put best was partnerships are started out with best of intentions to begin with. Um, Partnership agreements are written when times are good, but they should be written for when times are bad.
It's so funny. My fiance and I recently got engaged, and we were talking through, like, okay, we want to have a broad wedding, and we're talking through, okay, do we want to get married in the US and then go abroad and do the whole thing over there, or do we just want to like do the whole thing over there, like get married in France or in Italy or in Greece, wherever we decide. And there's always that issue of some countries you have to go there to get divorced if you ever do, which obviously we're not planning on getting divorced, but it's something you need to think about when you're entering into a partnership like this. And we were joking the other day, we should write ourselves, if we do decide to go get married in Italy or in France, like, okay, if you want to get divorced, you have to like go on like a Hallmark movie vacation together
Yeah.
so you can make sure you don't like fall back in love. Um, I love that you said have your contract be really, really detailed in what you're looking for. Can you give some more examples? I know you gave the example of the monthly meeting. Looking back, what are some like high level and low level examples of what you would put in that contract?
Very low level would be regular monthly or quarterly meetings, how those are to be conducted, um, and have that be specific, so that one, it is held there, it is consistent, and both people are held to that. Um, More middle level, I would say compensation is a big one. Um, make sure compensation is clearly detailed because um, inevitably you're going to have a compensation dispute. One partner is not going to feel, well, both partners typically are not going to feel adequately compensated for their role in the company. Um, and so having a clear roadmap to how compensation is determined. And it also helps carry, as I found out at the time when you need to do an evaluation, and if you do have a partnership split, determine what somebody is due out of the company and how people are to be paid, and and it also takes out the question of it takes out the question of distributions of profit and other things. So making a clear definition between salary and profit, or salary and no profit shares, or just profit shares, but make it very clear from the beginning, um, with some very specific um, clauses around how that's to be treated in the event that it's amended.
So Grant, I'm just going to jump in. I'm just going to jump in there because compensation and expectation of performance. There are a lot of, you said it perfectly. Contracts are written at the beginning when everything is great. And no one ever thinks that potentially, let's say after 30 years of an agreement, a partnership agreement, one might be ready to exit before another agency owner, and one might actually lose their steam. They might actually, I'm going to use some air quotes here, retire in place before another agency owner does. And it becomes a problem because we agencies have recurring income, and it's really difficult to walk away from recurring income, but not working at the same energy level as another owner creates this divide between, and it hurts the agency. So my focus is always on how do we keep the agency as healthy as possible, how do we keep it going into perpetuity. Having an expectation not only on compensation but performance is really, really important, and I think it's a missed step in partnership agreements oftentimes because it's actually not even fathomable. People don't even think that that could happen when you start, and never ever imagine what it's like 30 plus years down a partnership road, that we all have life experiences that are different, right?
Exactly. And people change, they grow, their expectations and their own standard of quality of life changes, and so that's going to apply pressure in different areas on that as well. And it's similar. And Lindsay, congratulations on your engagement. I think that is similarly, I mean, one of the strains on marriage as well, because it's really a partnership, whether you're in a partnership with somebody in an agency setting or any business setting or in a household. It comes down to, it's a marriage. And so if you're thinking about getting into a partnership, um, really look at it like you are marrying this person. and that is the way to look at it, because when a partnership splits, it it is a divorce. There is a um, the business, the assets of the business, the accounts, everything comes into play. It has to be split according to that contract. So it is a divorce. So consider that, when you're looking into it. And if you're already married, say, ask yourself, do you want to be married twice? In that case, do you want to, I always used to joke and say, I have my housewife, and she's amazing. I called her my household engineer, and um, I'm very fortunate that I can have a single family income or single household income, and she gets to raise the kids. But I have my housewife, and then I used to joke and say I had my work wife, because we'd almost bicker in the same way. It was kind of funny to a point. Um, but it really is a marriage, and you have to consider that going into that contract. And then that leads to, Lindsay, what you were saying about determining the country that you would want to get married in. Is that a country you'd want to go back and visit in a difficult time in your life? And hope, God forbid, it comes to that. Um, but in putting together a partnership agreement, make a very clear exit clause. If one partner decides it's time to leave, or the disagreements have just gotten to a place where the company is not effectively being ran, and it's detrimental to the employees and the company overall, how do you decide to what does it look like to split at that point, and make that very, very clear from start to finish? And that was, unfortunately, in my last experience, our agreement was not clear in that way. It left a lot of room for interpretation. And I learned a very painful lesson in that, because it took 8 months, of the attorneys back and forth trying to figure out what the original intent of that was. Um, and the attorneys are figuring that out. My legal counsel representing me in my best interest, and my former partner's legal counsel representing him in his best interest. Of course, now the perspectives are, in direct opposition to each other, reading the exact same black and white words, but there was just too much that was left up to interpretation. So it made it, I think, more contentious, um, than it needed to be. And you can make it a lot quicker if you have a very clear, concise contract from the beginning. So going into these, think about, worst case scenario, somebody's going to want to leave before the other. Um, and so make sure that the contract is written accordingly.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd say is don't do 50-50. And I know that was not your case, but agencies that have 50-50 agreements, that they're, in essence, you are creating something with a stalemate possible. For so if you require unanimous decision making in a contract and you have 50-50 owners, it requires you both to agree for all of the agreements that you write in that way. While I'm not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer, nobody on this call is a lawyer, but these are lessons learned because we get to see them over and over and over again, right? And I hope that anyone listening here and thinking about either becoming a minority owner or becoming a partner in an agency would take some notes and say, hey, listen, if I'm going to do this, these are the questions I'm going to ask. And potentially think about how you're going to stay in touch as you move through your partnership, because what you put on paper, I got married when I was 21. Let's just think about this. And I am not 21 today. We are very fortunate that we grew together, not apart. But that took a lot of communication. That took a lot of work. That took a lot of it took a lot of me not wanting to ever have to, go through that whole process again. Like, I found a good guy, I'm staying with the guy no matter what, right? So, but you got to do the work. You absolutely have to do the work, and that's true in any relationship. And I've had work relationships not stand the test of time, but I've certainly been able to make this one stand the test of time. So,
Well, absolutely. And it takes a lot of work, a lot of communication. It's not, and don't shy away from therapy either. There are business partners that they go to therapy. You got to learn how to communicate, because, again, you're two different people. You're not always going to be on the same page. You're not always going to have similar goals. Um, what one person wants for the company, or where they want, um, where they want to keep it. Some people are happy with, keeping a company at a certain size. Other people want to grow it, and that was something that I had never considered. Also, was um, I'm continuing to grow TruSummit. We have actually had phenomenal growth within the last few months, and that's because of my own standard quality life and expectations, and then also some of my staff and my managers that I've um, key people I've put in management positions where they want their income to be. When they wrote down their goal and I looked at it, I said, "Oh my gosh, well, we need to at least multiply the size of this agency by 10 times to reach those income goals for our staff and everything, if you look at it from a scale standpoint." And I didn't want um, my limitations as an individual, or the limitations of, I guess, uh, my thinking, my imagination, to be the limit of my agents and staff success. And so I had to start thinking in a way of how do we scale and grow this company beyond that. And again, it's sometimes and that kind of growth can cause stress. And so when you look at it from that point, you're going to have stressed out employees that maybe aren't liking the growth because it's causing a little bit more work on them as we go through growing pains. And as you go through these periods of transition, you're going to have people that naturally, whether it be a business partner or be an employee, that decide they want to leave the company because they like the status quo. They got to a point, in what you would say, Carey, people that kind of retire in place. They get to a point where they have met all their goals. They have succeeded. They're at the income level that they want. And so adding extra work and growth and growing pains makes whether it be staff or a business partner, can make them uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that you know I'm not saying that that's what happened in my case. That's another example of something that can happen, because I've certainly, as we've been growing the company, I've had some employees reach out and go, "Hey, I don't like this," and I've had to have that hard conversation, going, "Well, this is where the company's going. I'd like you to be a part of it, and it's your decision, because you're amazing and you're a key person. And if you want to continue to be a part of it, this is what the expectations are, and you're going to be really successful for it. But if you don't want to be part of it and you want to go be part of another agency that is just maintaining, I understand as well that may be where you want to go." So, as you have people with different goals, and looking at now from a partnership perspective, again, two different perspectives. Somebody may be wanting something different, and if somebody is trying to just maintain and somebody's trying to grow, that would be another reason that you kind of have that contention. And in a marriage as well, somebody might say, "I like this house." Somebody says, "I want a new house. I want a bigger house. I want a bigger boat." It's the same thing, marriage or partnership. You're in a marriage, so you got to grow
Stop
together.
talking to
You
my
have,
husband, Grant.
yeah,
Listen, stop talking to my husband, would you?
you
He
got
wants
to,
I want
a,
a bigger
yeah,
boat.
yeah,
I need a
exactly.
trolling motor.
you got
Yeah,
to, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. My wife just got on me recently because we have a very nice airplane, but I'm looking at jets now, and she's like, "Do we really need a jet?" But again, we got to communicate, because I'm gonna get the jet, and I would like her, because I would like her to be I would like her
That's
to
really
be my
funny.
still be my co-pilot. So I want the jet and I want my wife too.
Oh,
So
that is hilarious. Listen, that might be the title of this podcast. I want my jet and I want my wife too. That's
th-
hilarious.
there you go. Perfect.
Oh my
So
gosh. Well, Grant, I got to tell you, it is a pleasure talking to you. I love how open you are. I love how um, you are willing to share so other agents can learn from your experience. And you have a super interesting story, no question about it. We didn't even get into the airplane, but I would love to talk about that and the valuation of an agency and all that good stuff. Maybe that's a podcast in the future, because that was pretty fun to work with you on as well. So
and
anyway, if someone heard, go ahead, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, if someone heard this podcast and they wanted to reach out to you, they wanted to talk about maybe, get some advice on partnership, or talk about marketing some of the things that you do in the community and the ways that you do that. How would they reach you? How are they going to get in touch with you?
Uh, they could go direct. Well, email me. That would be the best way, honestly. I was going to go to our website, but they could check us out online, www TruSummit, and that's spelt without the E, TruSummit Insurance. Excuse me, the website's TruSummitINS.com. We're on social media as well. If you look us up, we should come right up. Or send me an email. And I'd be glad to share my email here, and that's grant@TruSummitINS.com. And I receive a lot of emails a day. I read and respond to roughly over 300 emails a day on average. So it might take me a little time to get back to you, but I do respond to emails, and I'd be glad to share my experiences.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.